Good morning. So today I have Chris with us, who is leading teams to deliver quality performance software that exceeds expectations and defines and helps in delighting customers, which is something that's so important because there's so many companies creating softwares these days. But you need to have that distinctive factor that distinguishes you from other companies that exist. Let's welcome Chris on 10 Minutes of Hiding Wisdom, where he will tell us where he's working, what he does within the company, and his secret towards success. Hi, Chris. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me now.
Of course, Chris. So, Chris, can you tell us where you're working, what your role is with the company?
Sure. So I work at Pendo. Pendo is a web analytics company. We make software that helps make your software better. As an analytics company, we focus on retention and just engagement of customers and kind of what their users end up doing. And so, yeah, we're a growing
So,
company.
my next question would be that there are a lot of companies that help entertaining customers and everything. What makes Pendo so special?
Pendo's really cool. So a lot of companies are focused on a very vertical stack. So our competitors in the analytics side are Heap, and on the guidance side are WalkMe. And so Pendo kind of bridges the gap between analytics and guidance and feedback, kind of a very horizontal placement of focusing on all these areas at once.
Okay, and how did you come across this company? Was it through a friend that you heard about it? Was it through social media? Just
Sure.
curious.
Yeah, so I'm from Delaware, and when my wife and I needed to move and relocate to Raleigh, we looked up top companies in Raleigh, North Carolina, and so Pendo was at the top of all the lists. And after spending some time in the area, I applied and eventually got the job as an engineering manager here.
Congratulations, it worked out for you, so hats off. But other than that, I'd love to hear about your experience at Pendo so far. So, what is the culture like, Chris, for anyone who wants to apply? What is your day-to-day routine like? What do you do every day? Like, just can you give us an idea?
Yeah. So Pendo. When I was interviewing, when Pendo was interviewing me, and I was interviewing Pendo, I was really looking for a company that not only had values but was really strong to those values and lived those values. So a bias to act and being direct and transparent. Like these were the values that are on the Pendo site. And as I'm interviewing them and talking and asking questions, I'm finding out like, is this just on the wall or is this talked about in the halls? And so the culture is very values driven, very values based, and I think that's kind of why a lot of folks really love working at Pendo.
Okay. And my question would be, so you mentioned that is it on the walls or is it actually in the halls? So how can you tell if a person specifically is just like telling you, okay, we believe in this, but they're not actually implementing it? So how can you see through and make sure that the company actually stands what it stands for?
Yeah, that's really tough. That's really tough. Like you ask a lot of different people the same kinds of questions. Tell me about a value that you really see exuded in your company. Tell me about a value. Tell me about a value that doesn't really stand true. Interviewers are pretty honest when you're talking with them about what their company does and how people operate. The company I was at just prior to this had values, but they weren't really followed. They were mentioned, but they weren't really exuded in the day to day interactions or activities. So I guess the way to find out is asking a lot of different interviewers how they feel and what they feel the company can improve on, and maybe better stick to those values, or maybe those values need to be adjusted.
Could be, could be. I mean, that's a good way to look at it because I think the environment, the landscape is constantly changing, and you need to constantly adapt to the certain new situations that come up and everything. So I can definitely see that. But I also like to hear your approach towards it, like global hiring. Like the pandemic changed the way companies hire. The pandemic changed the way how people work. So what is your take on global hiring? Like, what do you think of that? Is your company supportive of global hiring? Do you work hybrid? Do you go into office? What's the situation with your company?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, Penda believes in co-located engineering and just teams in general. So we have an office in Raleigh and San Francisco and in New York inside the states, and then globally in Sheffield, England, we have an office, and in Israel we have an office kind of separately. We also have an office in Australia and Japan that just opened up more recently. So they believe in more co-located teams located together, working together. But I know these opinions are changing, and we're trying to adapt. We're trying to adapt with the times. Of course, we've all been very hybrid or remote, during the course of the pandemic. So we are hiring globally in Sheffield and in Israel, and I'm open to us doing more otherwise. But right now, it's not. Right now, there are no immediate plans.
Okay, so you are the engineering manager. So, what are some characteristics or traits that you look for when people are applying for positions within your team? Like, what are some things that you would look on a resume and you'd be like, yes, this is the person that checks the boxes. This is what I want. So, can you maybe elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah. So I go through a ton of resumes. We're very fortunate. Pendo is a very attractive place for a lot of engineers, especially engineers out of coding school and college. So my best advice for people that are wanting to join Pendo, or really any engineering company, firmly look at the job description and augment your resume to fit the job description. I look at a ton of resumes that just have or not really have a lot of sort of ancillary data points and just pieces that as a hiring manager I don't care about. So if I'm looking at like a front end position or a back end position, I'm looking for those characteristics that match the job description, and anything additional to that just doesn't matter to me. Um, so if I'm looking for like a front end position and there's a lot of C sharp or Golang, like that's helpful, but it's not going to get the person from the resume application review into an interview in any way. So I
Okay.
please augment your resume to fit what the job is looking for. Don't lie, but just highlight those areas that you see in the job description.
And how do you think you should highlight it? Like, because there's so much space that you can actually put your thoughts into words. How exactly should you cater your resume towards the job that you're applying to make sure that you stand out?
That's a great question. So when I'm looking at a resume, I'm looking to see what, and at least on the technology side, what technology they applied and how they applied it to the job. So if I'm looking at a front end engineer and they have React, okay, you used React. That's fantastic. That's a skill in JavaScript, right? But how did you apply? What did you use React to build? What did you use it to build? Tying the technology with the business and product case. That is the quickest way for me to read. We can read a resume in like 5, 10, 15 seconds. That's what I'm scanning for. Technology and what they did with it. Technology and what they do with it every time. If I don't see that,
Okay.
I'm skipping it. So
That's helpful. That's definitely
yeah,
really helpful. The last question, Chris, would be: you mentioned that your company is hiring. What kind of positions are open? What kind of people do you want your team? What kind of people would you want to join your company specifically? And what would increase your chances of getting a dream job with Pendo like you did?
great question. So we're looking for someone to add to our culture, someone that is living our values. So the Pendo core values are listed on the job site, so people can see what we believe and see if that's what you believe too. Join us, right? Talk to us. Mention these. Mention how the core values are things that align with you personally. That's a really helpful like piece of data when we're interviewing potential engineers. As far as what we're hiring, we're front end engineers, back end engineers, especially in the cloud technology space of Golang. Um, we're also hiring DevOps and security engineers, site reliability. If it's in the technology stack, we're probably hiring for it. Also, engineering managers and leaders, quality engineers. If it exists, we're probably hiring for it.
Okay, well, there's a lot of positions
A lot
open,
of
but
positions.
other than that, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, for sharing about your journey, how you ended up with this company, your advice for job seekers out there, specifically how you mentioned that how you should apply, how you worked that specific coding language. Because if you're just citing that, okay, you worked this and not showcase a solution, what's the point of mentioning it?
Right.
So thank you so much for sharing that. But other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.